Okay, morning guys. Right, today we are going to start writing our story. We're just going to do the beginning today. So that is the beginning and the opening and the build-up part of our story. That's all I want you to write. Please don't go ahead and write it all. Just the first two sections. So before we go and start, what you're going to need to have is you're going to need to have your story map with your changes on. And if you weren't able to put your changes onto your story map, make sure you've got your changes sheet from yesterday. You also need your toolkit number 1 stuck in your books. Okay, make sure it's got toolkit number 1 on it. Toolkit number 1 is different from toolkit number 2 and toolkit number 3. Okay, so make sure that is stuck in your book before we start. Right then. Okay, so the beginning of the story must be started in an interesting way. The opening of a story all allows us to describe both the characters and the setting of the story. So you think about Rosie Revere, we found out about Rosie, we found out about where she was and what kind of things she did. That's what we want to find out about your changes. So you need to make sure that you've got the correct punctuation. So that means capital letters and full stops in every sentence, making sure that capital letters, we also use capital letters for names as well. Okay, it might be a good idea for you to also have your tricky word map, because then you'll be able to use those to spell them correctly. And also I'm looking for letter size being correct or letter formation the right way round. So this was my story map with my changes from last time. So I've got my pirate. I'm going to call him Pirate Pete. Okay, so Pirate Pete Engineer is my story. That's the end of my story. All we're interested in is the first two parts today. Here. So here is where I'm going to write it. So I've put both the toolkits, the year 1 toolkit. So this is the toolkit for year 1 and this is the toolkit for year 2. Okay, so those are the toolkits you'd have stuck in your book. Now you'll notice that they're exactly the same apart from the bottom bit. So to start a story in an interesting way, to make sure you've got adjectives to describe your main character, all your sentences have full stops and capital letters, and for year 1's letters formed correctly, that means they're the right way round. I don't want to see any letters formed the wrong way round. And then for year 2, it's exactly the same apart from the letters need to be the correct size, and I will talk about that a little bit in a minute. So this line up here, so underneath where you've got your toolkit, I want you on the first line to write the title of your story. So it's not Rosie Revere Engineer anymore. I've got Pirate Pete Engineer. Now I know that doesn't rhyme. Or I could write Pirate Pierre. But Pirate Pete Engineer. Because it's a title, it needs to have a capital letter for every word. That should be an E. Now, I talked about letters the correct size, so I want to see capital letters going right up to the top of the line above it. But the smaller letters, like the I's, the R's, the A's, and the E's, they need to be smaller. They need to be about halfway up. But then letters like G need to go below the line as well. Okay, if you're joining your writing, it needs to be nice and neat. Please don't rush it. Okay, I need to be able to read it. So I want to go back to my story map. I'm going to keep flipping backwards and I've got Once Upon a Time. So that's how I'm going to start. So big capital O for once and the N is smaller. Once is one of our tricky words. It should be on your tricky word mat if you're not quite sure how to spell it. It doesn't begin with a W. It also was one of our spelling words last week. So Once Upon a Time. There was a naughty pirate called Pete. Okay, once upon a time. There is another one of our tricky words. T-H-E-R-E. There was a naughty pirate. Now, pirate is part of his name here, but it's not here, so it can be a small p. Small naughty pirate called Pete. Pete does need a capital letter. Okay. And he wanted to be, I could put a full stop in there and say he wanted to be an engineer. Let's do that. Full stop. He wanted or he dreamed, actually. It was dreamed in the story. So let's get rid of wanted and put dreamed. He dreamed oh, excuse me. He dreamed of being a great... Now, great. If you've got your sound map, there are some different A sounds. Okay, so we've got AY, AI, and a split diagraph. Okay, now it can't be an AY for great. Okay, because that doesn't come at the end of a word. So you're looking at AI or a split diagraph. Now, it's a split diagraph because of the T. Whenever you've got 8, as in I ate something, it should be split diagraph there. Being a great... Actually, that's not even right. What am I talking about? It's not that A sound. It's a tricky A sound. It's EA. A great engineer. He dreamed of being a great engineer, full stop. Now, if I really wanted to, I could say once upon a time there was a naughty pirate called Pete and he dreamed of being a great engineer. That could be all one sentence and I could put a conjunction in there. I'm going to leave it for now though. Right, where did he live? So he didn't live in a house on Blue River Creek. He lived in a canal boat. So, Pete lived on, because you live on a boat, not in a boat. He lived on a... Now I need an adjective to describe my boat. He lived big boat, small boat. I could use big, I want it old. So he lived on an old... Actually, I want to do 2 here. So when you've got 2 adjectives, you put a comma in between them because it's like you're listing them. He lived on an old, smelly, he lived on an old, smelly canal boat. Okay, full stop. Excellent. So that's my... This is describing my... I could go back, if I really wanted to, go right back to my main... This is why you need it in front of you, and I haven't got it in front of me, so I'm showing you. So he has a wooden cutlass, a paper hat, and a pretend hook. Now, I could put that on there as well, just to add a bit more to it if I go back. So he, because we don't need Pete again, he had... Well, he has, not he had. He has a black paper hat and a pretend hook. Okay. Right, now I want to carry on with the story. So, classroom, shy. I'm just going to follow that as if I was writing it. So, in Lila careers classroom. In Blue. Blue needs a capital F because it's the name of a place. In Blue River Creek, Pete was too shy to speak. Was too, not TWO, too. When you're too something, too shy, too shouty, too quiet, it's TOO. Shy. So the I in shy is a Y at the end. To speak. Full stop. Let's go back to the plan again, because I'm trying to go for each full stop. When I've got to a full stop, I stop, I go back and I check it. When no one was looking, he peeked in the trash to get some things for his engineer's stash. Okay. When no one was looking, there's our ing word, year twos. So look, followed by the ing. He peeked in the trash to find it's our tricky word for this week, find things for his engineer he's an engineer stash. And I'm going to stop there for a minute. Okay, I've got to, if I flip back, I've got to here. I've not included this last line. I'm not going to forget it, but I just want to show you something of it. So now I'm going to sit, I think, right, I've done quite a bit. I'm going to read it back. Can I improve it? So, once upon a time there was a naughty pirate called Pete. He dreamed of being a great engineer. Pete lived on an old smelly canal boat. He has a black paper hat and a pretend hook. In Lilac Gray's classroom in Blue River Creek, Pete was too shy to speak. When no one was looking, he peeked in the trash to find things for his engineer's stash. So if I just go back and think, right, I'm going to have a look. Story starts in an interesting way. Right, I have done that because it starts once upon a time. I've got adjectives to describe. Well, if I do the adjectives in blue, I've got naughty, great, black paper hat, pretend hook, old smelly canal boat. All of these are adjectives, so I've definitely done that. My sentences have got full stops and capital letters, and my letters are formed correctly. They're even the correct size. So I've pretty much ticked everything off just from those few sentences. When you come to start the next part of the story, so when you get to the end of Gizmos here and you start the build-up, what I want you to do is I want you to leave a line. This means that you're starting to understand how paragraphs work. Now, paragraphs are sections of the story that go together. When you come to a different part of the story, you want a new paragraph. So we're going to leave a line here and just do the first sentence. So when Pete was small, he made a double cannon. Okay, that's all I'm going to write, and then I'm going to let you go for it. So when, capital W, when Pete, I've left a line here, and I want you to do the same. When Pete was small, he made, and actually I'm going to add a little bit in there, he made lots of inventions. I'm still writing with a mouse, which means it's really difficult to do. He made lots of inventions. And I'm going to put full stop there, and I'm going to stop. Okay, so I want you to have a go at writing the opening and the build-up part. Make sure there's a gap between each section today. So once you have finished, give yourself some editing time. Okay, reread all your sentences to make sure they make sense. If you're at home, read them to an adult. Okay, check that every sentence has a full stop and a capital letter. Check the spelling of your tricky words by using the mat, and think about your phonics as well. And then finally tick off your toolkit. The one thing I haven't added onto this is it might be worth you looking at the Christmas recount that you did and going all the way back then, and what did I write as your target? Did I put finger spaces in there as one of your targets? Because I haven't added that to the toolkit. So those are your personal targets. That's not targets for everybody. So you can go back and check. Am I asking you to add conjunctions in? If you are, then put them into your opening. You don't have to leave them out just because they're not as part of the toolkit. Right, off you go, and we're going to write the problem part tomorrow.